I mean, the reality is that our elected officials have very little power relative to the bureaucracy until DOGE. So DOGE is a threat to the bureaucracy. It's the first threat to the bureaucracy. Normally the bureaucracy eats revolutions for breakfast. This is the first time that they're not, that the revolution might actually succeed, that we could restore power to the people instead of power to the bureaucracy.
Now, the size of it
was
when you guys first started investigating it, when you first get in, how much of it was shocking? Like this, just the size of it all?
Well, the size of it all, the small decisions result in multi-billion-dollar outcomes. So, we'd see, there was a case where we saw one person was getting $1.9 billion sent to their NGO, which basically got formed about a year ago and had no prior, no prior activity. So they just stand up an NGO. The whole NGO thing is a nightmare. And it's a misnomer, because if you have a government-funded non-governmental organization, you're simply a government-funded organization. It's an oxymoron.
Right. It's a loophole.
Yes. It basically, the government-funded NGOs are a way to do things that would be illegal if they were the government, but are somehow made legal if it's sent to a so-called nonprofit. But these nonprofits are then used to, people cash out these nonprofits. They become very wealthy through nonprofits. They pay themselves enormous sums through these nonprofits.
It's so insane that that's been going on for so long.
It's a gigantic scam, like one of the biggest, maybe the biggest scam ever.
And how many NGOs?
I think there's a total number of NGOs, probably millions, but in terms of large NGOs, tens of thousands. I mean, it's actually kind of a hack to the system where someone can get an NGO stood up for a fairly small amount of money. Like George Soros was really good at this. Like George Soros is like a system hacker. Like he figured out how to hack the system. He's a genius at arbitrage. I mean, these days he's pretty old, but a genius at arbitrage. He figured out that you could leverage a small amount of money to create a nonprofit, then lobby the politicians to send a ton of money to that nonprofit, so you can take what might be, a $10 million donation to a nonprofit to create a nonprofit and leverage that into $1 billion NGO. A nonprofit is a weird word. It's just a non-governmental organization, and then the government continues to fund that every year, and it'll have a nice sounding name, like the Institute for Peace or something like that. But really, it's a graft machine.
And what are their requirements with that money? What do they have to do?
Just really no requirements at all.
So they just get grants and the government just assumes that they're doing good work.
I think a lot of people in the government know that they're not doing good work. But it's a giant graft machine. I mean,
but surely
people online are like unpacking this,
right? It almost seems fake. Like when you're seeing how we were covering this article that said 55,000 Democrat NGOs were discovered that had been contributing to campaigns and moving things around and pushing propaganda, and they were all connected. And they found it through AI. That you have to go through steps and steps and steps to figure out where the money's coming from. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's all funneling down to this group, and this group does that. And it's a giant propaganda machine, a giant regime change machine.
All things being equal, if we didn't have a gigantic budget deficit where interest payments, the interest on the national debt exceeds the Defense Department budget, which is truly astounding, which means so we're paying over $1 trillion of interest on the national debt, then, okay, we would have more room for wasting money, basically. But when we're spending so much money that the country's going bankrupt, then we really need to stop spending money unless we're sure it is good value.
So